Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Jedrek. I'm with Right Rudder- the Right Rudder Marketing Podcast. We have a special guest today, Ari Prevalla. He is the owner of the business called Flight Schools for Sale. So I'm not going to give the whole intro. I want to, just he has a lot of oh my God, what's going on here? He have a lot of what's he call it? He has a lot of experience in the flight school market. So I'll give the floor to Ari, then let him give a small introduction about himself.
Thank you, Tim. Uh, Thank you for having me. Nice to be here. All right, I'll introduce myself. Ari Prevalla, a longtime aviator. Started in 1994, so it's been about 30 years. Um, just like the rest of us, probably, I wanted to be a pilot since I was a kid. Became a pilot at my young age. Worked for an airline. Uh, Everything's got to do with the wings, from airline security, airline operations, airport operations. Became a flight school student. Uh, Obtained my private instrument commercial, CFI, ATP. Shortly after, became a flight school owner. So I'm a former flight school owner, two locations. I would say good medium-sized flight school, about 30 planes and more. On an FBO, two FBOs, Part 135 charter. Since then, I moved on to aviation flight school consulting. Come to realize that flight schools don't really network with each other, and uh, was looking to become a link between flight schools and take my experience, started with one plane, moving on to 30 plus planes, and bring that experience uh, with other owners. The company is called Aviation, International Aviation. The flight school for sale.com is our brokerage side. International Aviation is the consulting side. So we are five consultants. We consult flight schools from operation all the way to business.
Cool. So you have two businesses really, actually. So I got that wrong. You have the flight schools for sale as your brokerage business as of now. I mean, in the past you also had the flight schools and all that stuff too, but right now you have a consulting business and then you have a brokerage business, right? Or sales. Is
We
that
actually
right?
started with, yeah, correct. We started with the consulting business, not planning to be so-called brokers, right? But as we consulted many flight schools, some of them asked us to find a buyer, and we did. And we saw there was more and more need of it. So we established our portal, flightschoolsforsale.com, not really thinking much of it in the beginning, but then we realized there's a huge need for a flight school consultant that helps uh, buy or sell flight schools. And as far as we know, we're pretty much the only one in the country.
Yeah, I think you are. I don't know of any other brokerage account. I know there's a lot of flight school consultants out there. So, I mean, technically, I would be considered a flight school consultant if you think about my marketing business. Um,
Certainly.
but there's also a lot of other consultants out there that help with service, that help with, let's say, getting your Part 141 certification. I think even FASANA, Flight School Association North America, they help some type of consulting program. I think Debbie kind of reaches out to the flight schools and reaches out and talks about how to get the Part 141 authorization and all that stuff. So I think consulting is kind of a mixed market. There's a lot of people there, but I think for actually selling flight schools, I mean, obviously you have the different channels like, I think businesses for sale, sell your business.com or something like that is another one, like just general, like, generalist out there. But I think for you, with a specialization in flight schools and also previous experience in the flight school market, that totally separates you from the competition and gives you kind of that UVP, the unique value proposition, because you have experiences running flight schools, right? So,
Correct.
kind of take us back. How far back I guess was that when you were running a flight school? Like what? Like that's like a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Well, I sold my flight school in FBO about 10 years ago. And, even
ten
as
years
a
ago.
flight school owner, yeah, correct. Even as a flight school owner, I was put under wing of a well-known um, aviation consultant. So I kind of learned the trade of aviation consulting. I really liked it. So I ended up selling all my aviation businesses and moved on to consulting. without even thinking we're going to the brokerage side of it. As you mentioned, there's many reputable aviation consultants. You mentioned Debbie; she's great. I actually work with her in a project that we just picked up. Um, and there is business brokers that are trying to sell aviation businesses, in particular flight schools. So at some point, uh, early in my career as a consultant, I was hired by business brokers to help them out sell this, strange businesses that then never sold before. And kind of that's how the idea came out. Let's try to, do this to help out flight schools find a new buyer, new investor, uh, help a buyer move into a flight school business.
We have some guest comments in here already. So,
Okay.
Chris, I think I know who Chris that is, but he's saying that he can barely hear you. I kind of have some difficulty too. That's why I put my headset in. Is there any you're able to increase your microphone a little bit little louder for the audience over here?
Yeah, I speak quietly. I know that, but my mic is at max. I'll try to speak up. Sorry, Chris. If you missed anything, let me know.
There you go. I think you can hear. I'll reduce my volume that way. I'm not so loud on here. Where's make me go a little lower. That way you can kind of normalize just a bit. Okay. So I put mine just a little lower for the team here. So that way it should be a little better. Okay. So you had it's 10 years ago, and it's kind of how it evolved into the consulting agency and the brokerage company. If I don't know, we can focus on different things. We can focus kind of on your experience as a flights in the flight school. I know it's more than 10 years ago, but you have a lot of good numbers. I think when we talked initially, you're talking about 40% profit margins. You're talking about multiple seven-figure revenue. You can also talk about consulting and how you help with that, or we can talk about selling your business. So there's kind of three pathways we can take this
Right.
conversation.
I'll go with the consulting side of it. As I bet there's few flight school owners in the group. I don't see who's on it, but flight schools don't really network with other flight schools, unfortunately. We don't have Pasana that kind of puts us together once in a while. But as I start with myself as a new flight school owner. I built a flight school 141, CVIS, chartered, and all of that. But I thought I'm reinventing the wheel in a sense. So there was really nowhere to reach out, for guidance. What kind of aircraft should I buy? How should I go about 141? Is this the right thing or wrong thing, right? So, we all kind of self-taught mostly, unless, a flight school owner was an operator in a different flight school. Maybe has some know-how they carried over and apply it. But, what I see with flight schools that we manage in our network, they're self-taught. And they're sometimes surprised to say, "Oh my God, did you go through this as well?" Of course I did. There's only certain regs that we have to follow. So, one of my clients called me a flight school doctor. I don't like that. I'm not sure if I should market it to me, but so that's what we do. um, we, someone asked me once, what is a flight school consultant? What do you do? Well, in a sense, we teach schools how to teach, right? In a sense, okay. And I try to show, you can't teach everyone, but you can show everyone certain things. I try to show the owner how to make money, right? Now, most of flight school owners, right? There's probably about over 2,000 flight schools, Part 61 and 141. Most of them don't have a business background. So they were either flight instructors, right? Bought a plane, bought another plane, leased another one. By inertia, they became a large flight school. They're turning around millions. But on the profit side, they either don't have the experience how to turn profits, or they're too concentrated on making pilots and not looking at their bottom line, right? So my message to flight school owners is, don't forget to make money. You're entitled to. You're making a lot of students, a lot of people with great careers out there that fly beautiful jets. You're entitled to make money. All right. So one, um, you're entitled to profit. You're a for-profit organization, right? Put aside the flight club attitude and look at your company as for-profit organization, right? So there's two kind of avenues of how you look at. I'm a flight school. You're my student. Under closed doors, you're a company, and they're your clients. And there's nothing wrong with it. You shouldn't feel guilty about making money. You have to make enough money so you can reinvest into your company. Flight schools have to grow. Do not stop growing and make enough money to call yourself a business. All right. So one is on the academic side, right? We go in there as a team. We standardize all the teachings, right? So every flight instructor teaches the same way. Some flight school owners probably agree when if I say that every instructor like to teach kind of their way, which at the end of the day hurts the students and hurts the school, because the moment a student moves from one instructor to another, he has to step back. I say 3 to 5 lessons, which nobody's happy about that. So if you standardize all the flight lessons the same way, student can move from one instructor to another easily and finish up quick. Right? And then on the business side, there's many ways of how to increase profits, right? What makes a profitable school, right? I think that's one of the questions you asked with him.
It's a pretty big. Right? I think a lot of owners want to hear this. What do you call it? I mean, just off of my experience, right? I mean, I've worked with flight schools across the country and even around the globe now. We have some international clients. For flight schools, I mean, I think it's relatively standard to see a profit margin of around less than 10%. I think if I was to be, somewhat healthy, I have multiple 7-figure flight school, I might be doing like maybe 4 million in revenue. I think what I'm seeing in those flight schools is around 10% profit margin. Now, there's a lot of other flight schools that are barely breaking even. They're in the red. I mean, that's or less than 5%. It's also very common in the industry too. So I think it's a very hot topic of how do we, as flight school owners, become more profitable.
Correct, and there's really no data for a flight school owner to see what's the other flight school it's taking home. What is it profiting, right? Do we know the standards? Not really. Okay. Well,
it's all anecdotal at this point.
Right. As an aviation consultant, yes, I teach and consult flight schools, but I also get a feedback from them, which really teaches me a few things. Right. A good flight school should profit at least about 20%. I would like to see a 25. A very good flight school, very well run flight school should profit 30 up to 40%. Okay. Now, what increases profits? Well, let's distinguish a Part 61 and Part 141 with CETAs, right? So 2 different schools. So Part 61 school depends on enrollment from a 30 to 50 mile radius. So unless you're a highly populated area, you only draw so much. And yes, you compete with the other flight school if there's another one in the field, right? So your enrollment will only be so much. Unless you're Part 61 and you have this niche specific course that you do, right? For example, multi-engine training. You could be anywhere. They come to you to get the training in a few days, right? But if you're just a private instrument commercial Part 61 school, you only have so much to draw from. So what do flight school owners do? They figure, okay, let's market, right? And every flight school owner is kind of you probably see that, Tim. We're glad we have you. We haven't had, a company like yours. Let me throw a plug for you. We try to kind of invent the wheel as far as marketing. So I see flight school owners say, I'm going to go to this high school and I'm going to advertise with all the high schools. All right, wrong. You throw money nowhere. Okay. I think last time we spoke to him, we were looking at about 1% of our nation is pilots. So we got about 400,000 pilots in the country, right? So if we take that data, 1 in 30,000 Americans is a pilot. So it depends where you live. You can do the math now. How many students would I get, right? So you won't get much, right? you have to go 141 in CBIS. Okay. Otherwise, you're only going to look at, you're going to only grow so much and probably stay there. Increasing profits, you need to have a zero to hero program, an accelerated. Okay.
Yeah.
Accelerated program where a student comes in a full-time basis, comes in with 0 time, leaves with 250 hours in 6 months. Okay. You group them together, 4 or 5 students, fly the same instructor. So we're not going into one-on-one, one instructor, one student, as typically I see in many flight schools. An instructor could brief all 4 students in the morning on their flight and then fly them all. So you cut down on costs, increase profits, and accelerate, right? Accelerated students, well, where are they coming from? Locally, probably won't find much unless they come from other parts of the country. Well, or the ones that we know they're accelerated and they already have the money in hand, international students. A single key to success for every flight school. Therefore, if you don't have the 141 in CBIS, or at least this, CBIS with 141, of course, you're not bringing international students. You might have some local students that come in as tourists and get the TSA, and however, but that's not your accelerated students. Accelerated international students come via visa, which is an M1 or F1. In order to sponsor them, you need to issue an I-20 form via CBIS. At that point, you're going from 30 to 50-mile radius to the world. Okay. And something we talked about last time, what brings profits down? The dropout rate, right? Domestically, I think we have some data about 70% dropout rate, probably more. I would say 90% more.
Yeah, I'd say more. I think
Yeah.
85, 90 in my opinion, but it depends on
Correct.
the school too, but I'd say it's pretty high. I mean,
So first you have somebody dropping out that might blame you as a flight school, as a flight instructor, that you didn't do a good job. I handed you $10,000. Why am I not a pilot? Or 15 or 20. Then you get a bad reviews, and sometimes you end up in court. Sometimes I do as well for my clients, right? A domestic, and nothing wrong with domestic students, just that as long as they have the funds in place and looking towards accelerated pilot course, they are, profit friendly. International students are all airline bound. They're coming in and out 6 months. They go, right? They spend between $60,000 to $100,000. So you have a student that spends that amount of money within 6 months versus a weekend warrior that takes 2 lessons a week for a private pilot, and it takes about 6 months to get. Nothing against that. Don't close a door on the private pilot student, of course. But going back to increase profits in order to stay in business and grow the school, which is equally important, accelerated programs are the way to go. And again, if you don't have CBIS, my first message and last will be get CBIS. Okay. How long does it take? For those that have it, probably less back then. Now it takes somewhere up to 4 to 6 years. The earlier you start, the sooner you get. Okay. Let me switch my head and
let's
put
talk
my
about this for a
broker.
bit. So I think some people don't know what CBIS is or CBIS is.
Oh,
What
sorry,
is CBIS, the whole entire program? How do you get CBIS? And you're starting to mention timelines and stuff like that. Typical timelines
Right.
to get your CBIS and all that stuff. Let's get into that one.
Certainly. Thank you, Tim. CBIS stands for Student Exchange Visitor Information System. This is a system software portal that you'll be granted access by the Student Exchange Visitor Program, SCVP. SCVP is part of the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, so not just flight schools, every school, vocational or degree school that seeks approval gets granted a CBIS code. All right, so now you are allowed to issue an I-20 form So students in another country could get a M1 visa to travel to the United States. Your I-20 form dictates how long would this student be allowed to stay here. He's a visitor. He's a student in part-time or full-time basis, depending how you applied and what is your course outline called for. In order to obtain SEVIS, you must be a R141 school. So 141 is a must, right? And then you apply a I-17 form, student exchange program. 141 has the provisional. You cannot apply if you are in provisional. I believe you could 3 months before you get your full 141. Then you apply with SEVIS. All right. There's many consultants. We can help you out. I don't want this to be plugged towards me. But there's many.
It is a plug towards you. This is you're our featured guest. We're talking all about your business. I already do all my monthly webinars, my shorts on myself. So this is more so a platform for Ari and his business and the consulting but it's not really a plug for our businesses. I want to say I said that earlier, but what it is we want to provide the education. We want to provide the information to the flight school industry. I think that's my main reason we're doing this. I have different guests on the weekly podcast, talking about their service, talking about their product, just because there's not much information out there. Like you said earlier, we're all kind of alone in here, in our own silo. So it's not. Don't worry about not plugging yourself. I want you to plug yourself as much as possible. Talk about your business, promote it. Well, I'll give a small promotion for Right Rudder Marketing at the end of it, so you don't have to worry about me.
To be flight school friendly, my message is to urge them, the ones that don't have 141 and SEVIS, start as soon as you can. Try to figure out yourself. A lot of us have done it, but there's help out there. Help in the forms of consultants like me and others. We need more 141 and SEVIS in the country, right? We have a huge influx of international students, right? India market is opening up. China market is coming back. Europeans and South Americans have been staying. Okay. Over 50% of the world aviation happens right here in the country, and we also teach most of the world pilots. So there's business out there for I don't know how many years, right? I was asked by other flight school owners how many students, international students we have coming up, right? Now with the influx from 2 major carriers in India, I couldn't estimate, but I said, I think we don't have enough planes, right? And I might not be wrong. So flight school owners, take your CFI hat once in a while, put your business hat, and for the sake of growing your school and being a bigger flight school owner, 141 at SEVIS again is a must.
Definitely. Let's talk about, you kind of mentioned the planes. Well, first off, I want to share this with you guys. Keith over here in the comments a few minutes ago, he did put a comment on our live stream feed. Says, Ari is right. Most schools are not charging enough to raise our rates today. I mean, yeah, put your business cap on, think about your marketing, think about your sales, thinking about your pricing, thinking about who your ideal customer is, and really trying to market to that way. I think, Ari's model is not going to fit everyone. I mean, I think Ari's talking about doing the 141 SEVIS. I mean, some people like the weekend warrior model. I mean, some people like that, but just realize that I think, especially from schools I've worked with too, I noticed the people that have the 0 to Hero program, the schools that have those type of accelerated classes, and they're able to get, international students, those are the bigger schools. Those are the ones making, $6 to $8 million a year, versus the ones that are making, let's say, 500,000 or less than $1 million. I mean, those are the weekend warrior schools. And, we want to service the American population too, but we also have to make it an accelerated program. We have to make sure that we, have the infrastructure at our flight school to do this. Let's talk about kind of like, you talk about the planes for a bit. You're talking about there's not enough planes out there to serve the community. What's an appropriate, one of the KPIs, key performance indicators at flight schools is flight hours. And I think how many hours does a plane fly per month or per year? And it varies. I've had varying answers to it, but obviously there's a point of like how often the plane's in the sky. At what point does that actually start? Your plane becomes less a liability and now more an asset. It's generating money. There's that break point where, hey, this plane's not making any money. It's just sitting on the ramp all day, especially the multi-engines, by the way. I think that's just my opinion here. The multi planes, if they're not really getting that in the air that much, it's becoming, a big cost. So what's in your take, what's the ideal amount of hours or flight hours a plane should have, and how many planes should a school actually really try to get?
Correct. Right. Tim, if I can only add on the comment that gentleman put in quickly, it's something I want to talk about. But you're not charging enough. You're not charging flight schools. There you go. Raising the rate. Stop advertising per hour basis. If I'm a new student and want to come to your school and ask, what do you charge per hour? Your answer should be, what do you want to be, a pilot or just take a discovery flight? We have a discovery flight charge. Oh, pilot. Okay, well, it takes 40 hours for the regs. National average 76.2 last year, I believe, but our average is 50. Here's a 50-hour course. Here's a 40-hour course. And put it all together. Put one price at the end. This is no promise, but this makes 90% pilots, everybody coming in and out of here. Have them calculate what the hourly is, right? You will add ground school, sim as much as you can, right? 2.5 hours towards your private pilot, 20 instrument and more, right? Whatever course materials you have, a book, Jepson, Glam, anything, put it all together, uniform, this and that. This is it, right? For hourly rates should be high, okay? Higher than average. Show your student that, you have a better aircraft, you charge more. So don't be shy to raise hours. Don't look at your competition, your full course. So stop advertising per hourly basis, per hourly charges, start advertising a course. Okay, all right. Go back to the fleet. Putting your fleet together. Well, unless you bought a flight school that already has a fleet, is it a high wing or a low wing? Personal reference, right? I prefer Cessna 172s, right? But personally, I'm a Piper guy, so my flight school was built out of Pipers. Nothing wrong with it. And it's on and off. This plane flies better. The other one is better as ownership. But look at your market, right? If you're international student bound school, let's say most of my students come from India. Well, you want to make sure that the aircraft you fly, it is approved in India or another country. Example why? Once they go back, they have to get recertified in their country, and they have to fly the same plane they were trained on. Well, India might not have the particular model, right? There's a lot of new good aircraft coming out, but, conversion is tough. It's kind of a think of what plane and how you want to build your fleet. Don't mix and match. Don't take one of each. Stay with the same brand. Stay with the same model as much as you can. Break-even point and profitability. What is the numbers to meet and beat as far as flight hours, right? As a flight school owner, we sell two products: flight time, instructor time, right? Count those numbers. How many hours you flew, how many ground courses, and try to meet and beat those numbers, right? The break-even point with owned aircraft, it's about 300 hours. So if you flew 300 hours a year, maybe you have broken even, right? The success amount of hours per year that I use is 1,000 hours per plane. All right. 600 hours and more a year, you're in a positive, you're doing well. 1,000 hours, 1,000 hours is a number to meet. I rarely see flight schools that meet 1,000 hours, right? Recently, I was working with an international airline. Can't disclose which one, but a huge airline that needs hundreds, if not 1,000 pilots a year, right? And they run their own school. They came back with a number of 16 to 1,800 hours per plane per year, daylight time flying only. They don't fly at night. It blew my mind. I wish I could see that, right?
It's crazy.
So yeah, these planes fly as much as you can fly. So put a number out there. If you're a school with 10 planes, say to yourself, I need to fly 10,000 hours. You know, how many hours per week that is, how many hours per day that is, right? Granted, your multi-engine probably won't fly as much. You have bad days, put them in a sim, get one, buy one, lease one. But, those are numbers to beat. 300 is break even, 600, you're good. 1,000 is the number to meet as soon as possible. You are profitable at that point.
So those are good numbers. So let's repeat that for the audience. 300 hours per plane is the break-even point. Really, is where you're going to see that. 600 is doing okay. You're getting a little bit profit, and 1,000 is really where your goal should be. So I think it's definitely something that a lot of bicycles don't achieve that. I've seen like usually around 500. To be honest with you, is kind of a. So it depends.
Correct.
It depends on the bicycle. So some bicycles actually get the 100 hours per month for each plane, especially the busy ones. I mean, it's possible. I've seen it out there. I think that's another thing too. What I like about doing these podcasts, it's our audience is mainly bicycle owners. It gives different perspective of what's outside your local market. So you might know your local flying club, what they're doing, and the competitor down the street. But let's say you're a school in Florida, now you get to hear what's going on in say in California, and the whole market as a whole. So it's really good. Okay, so we talked about getting the planes. I think one thing that you mentioned here is the recertification. So if you are doing a service program, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think we have a line. But throw this in, some flight school owner may say, I don't make money even 500 hours, right? This is an average flight school plane. We know what I'm talking about, right? $5,000 plane built in the 70s or 80s. If you have a glass cockpit, brand new, $500,000 plane that you're financing or leasing or whatnot, adjust your numbers. But I'm taking the, 6-pack, maybe some glass of ordinary flight school plane that we see, right? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, if you have a plane, just fly it as much as you can. We were talking a little bit. Oh, I remember what I was going to talk about. So you're talking about having a very similar fleet. So high wing, low wing, choose what you want. Don't mix up the planes. So I know some schools that do, let's say, a mix of Technums, some Pipistrel, maybe a Cessna in there, maybe a Vashon, or what's called was that new one called Vashon or something like that. And then the Piper, right? They kind of mix and match what they have. I think you bring a good point too. So if you're bringing in international students, you have to be recertified. So you think of the FAA as a commercial pilot certificate, right? Or FAA's ACP. They have to go to, let's say, India back, and then now they have to go to the Indian FAA version, right? And recertify through that. And then their hours, are they able to count the hours for that? So I think it's a good thing to consider when they're buying people are thinking about buying new planes is like, will this, the long-term gain, help my students if they're from, let's say, my primary students are from India or my primary students are from China. We had a flight school that had a lot of people from France. France is a pretty popular place to do it too. So,
I mentioned Cessna and Piper. I'm not discriminating any other aircraft. Pipistrel, great machine. I know the owner indirectly a little bit, but I know they've done tremendously well. Love Technum. I like every aircraft. For business sense, if you have a business plan or a route, which you're going to take, right? On, again, hopefully domestic or international students, check your market, right? Could be India or another country where your license says private pilot, Cessna 172. So could you fly another aircraft? Maybe not, right? So you can't. So just make sure the manufacturers would not mention that, right? They'll say, let's say recently another brand came up and we realized that they are they have a dealer in India and they're present in India. I said, wait a minute, let's do a little more research before we go forward. We come to realize that it is approved for private flying, but not for training, right? So don't take the parameters that we have here in FAA world. So, a lot of freedom, and think, the rest of the world follows that. We have this. So when you pick your fleet, as you're building a flight school, just check your market, um, see how long they've been around. You know, when I was a young flight school owner, I kind of fell in love with this beautiful new aircraft. Won't mention the name. That was really built for flight schools. Right, the 100-hour inspection was a breeze. I don't know, a lot less than the 16 hours that we call for a 172 or a Piper, burning 4 gallons an hour. So I kind of calculated, oh, great. Okay, well, yeah, they're good aircraft. They're financially backed, I guess. Um, so maybe I should go this particular aircraft as my fleet from my flight school. Then again, I try to, insure them. Insurance came out at least twice as much as your regular plane, right? As your 172, because it's a new machine, right? So the insurance cost will offset your fuel savings. So fuel savings are just one factor, maintenance, and don't forget the insurance. It's getting worse out there. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, insurance is kind of a bigger cost as well. We didn't even talk about in our prep call. We didn't talk about insurance, but it's kind of how do. Okay, here's a good question for you. So insurance is going up, gas is going up, inflation. A lot of people want to. I don't want to talk about politics too much, but a lot of people bring in like, oh, everything's the price of everything is going up. How do we stay afloat as a flight school? I mean, it's a kind of an open-ended question there.
Raise your prices. Don't don't be shy to raise your prices. Cost goes up, raise your prices. Everybody does. You should do as well. You're not running a flight club. You're running a profitable flight school. Keep that in mind. Do not delay. Fuel went up. Oh, well, let me see if it's going to go down. No, raise them immediately. You can always adjust. It usually goes up. All right. I've seen flight schools where they add the fuel surcharge.
Yeah, I was about to say it's surcharge.
They,
I've seen it where they do a surcharge additional, and it's variable based on the gas price.
correct. I've seen international um, proposals for 10, 20, 100 students where a flight school would say this price is good for so long, or this price is good as long as the barrel of fuel doesn't exceed certain number. It might sound strange, but it protects you. So don't be shy to do that. I personally don't like the fuel surcharges because the student now needs to calculate and it kind of leaves it open. I rather just adjust the prices periodically as fuel goes up.
Good. Very well. Okay, so one question I have, I guess, to kind of move the conversation forward towards the flight school for sale part. Let's say I'm a new owner and I'm thinking about starting my flight school. So we already have some ideas here. We have, raising prices, make sure your prices are the right model. We have standardizing the fleet. We have standardizing the curriculum. Those are all different things we can do to increase our profit. What's the best route for me as a new owner of a flight school to establish myself, to market myself? I guess here's the question here. Do I start it from the ground up? And let's say I have an airport down the street that there's no competition. So I'm gonna purchase a hangar and call it a day. I'll start my shop here. I'm gonna go through the certification process myself and build it. Or is there another way around that? Is there another way to kind of save some time and save money potentially when I'm starting my flight school?
You're talking about startup, right, Tim? How would you? What's the best way to start?
Yeah, if you're starting up, is it easier to? I guess I'll say it explicitly. Is it easier to build it from scratch, or is it better just to buy a school? I mean,
Look, the simple, quick answer is, if you have the money, definitely buy it. Like anything else, it's cheaper to buy than build, right? But it's easy to say if you have the funds, you get the capital, right? It's fairly easy to open a flight school, and most of flight school owners figure that out. Okay, I'm a flight instructor. I'll find a plane, and I'll add water, and I'm Part 61 flight school. I'll put a big sign, a uniform, and I'm a flight school, right? 6 years later, it's still that small flight school. Unfortunately, not all of them. I don't want to generalize, but if you are aviator, if you're a flight instructor, if you're someone that looking to uh, start up a buy, okay, there you go. I just read that note. Um, if you have a good business plan, put it together. You have a capital, buy a flight school that's established as big as you can. Right? You're looking again. Hopefully, it has 141 in CVIS, or it's a Part 61. Maybe has a college contract. Maybe just a 141 that has military contract. Right? When you talk about those schools are doing very well. Um, Maybe has 141 that has a VA approval. Here you go, another accelerated student program with minimal dropout. So if you're the capital, buy a ready school. If you want to start from scratch, you're going to be Part 61. It's going to take you a while to get to 141, and to get to those bigger contracts because competition it's already there. They're already big. I mean, I know Part 61 schools, they own 30 planes and they were doing well, right? But put a business plan together. Um, find a back, find a partner. Talk to me or someone like me. We can look it up and shop for money. Start with a bigger school and move on. Let's classify schools. We talked about Part 61 and 141, and it's easy, we know those. But let's classify them into small, medium, and large school, right? If I say I own a medium-sized school, how big do you think it is, right? Small schools, I would put, I'm sorry?
I was about to just answer the question, but no, you keep going.
Yeah.
So small, medium, large schools. What's the
Small, medium,
I
large
guess
schools.
differentiation between them?
Correct. Small school will be your, mom and pop, 1, 2, 3, 5 planes, up to 10, right? Medium is 10 to 30. Large school is 30 to 200. Okay. Why is such a huge, you know, 30 to 200? Once you have 30 planes, very quickly you'll get to 50 and 100. When I say quickly, it could be a couple of years. Now, maybe flying 30,000 hours. How much is that? A lot of income.
I don't know. Let's
What
do
are
the
you?
calculation. I need to get my calculator out here.
Well,
Is that
30 times
1,000,
30,000 times
right? So
200.
I
You're,
would say
7, 8
200 an
million
hour. $6 million school. It's not too bad. Yeah,
at least, and plus, right? So if you're
six
at
million and
20%
above. Yeah.
profit, yeah, you're profiting 1.2 million. You buy new planes, you're taking advantage of the aggressive depreciation values, right? So you're saving money in taxes as well. Not for me to say I'm not an accountant, but what I see around, and slowly buy more aircraft and keep growing. Um, so size the school up. Um, if you're looking to start strong, bring a backer in, put a business plan together. Um, if you're looking to buy, um, do a start with a very good due diligence. Right? You really need to
I'm
understand the
sorry.
school.
What list?
Due diligence.
You said start with the
Start
what?
with
I'm sorry.
due diligence.
Due diligence. Start with a good due
Yeah,
diligence. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Got it.
Start with that. Do a market analysis, right? Um, Talk to the chief pilot. Make sure the staff will stay at least in the transition period. How long is that? Minimum 3 months, up to a year. Put that in contract. Have the owner stay there. You can let them go at will, but you need that support from a previous culture, right? A chief pilot is a key. Some parts of the country, there's maybe more, but others less. Florida has a good logistics, a lot of flight instructors hanging around, a lot of retired pilots that would love to be chief pilots somewhere, just to be engaged. But anywhere else, besides I would say Florida and some other part of the country, you want to hold on to your chief pilot. You're losing your chief pilot. You have 60 days to replace him. Otherwise, you lose your 141. And the domino effect, you lose your CVIS and everything. So have a backup, have an assistant chief pilot that's moving up with the requirements to become a chief pilot eventually, right? Do in your due diligence, do a good pre-buy inspection of all the fleet, the aircraft, right? At some point, interview every CFI. You want to start a business with a full crew, unless you have your own staff, and no buyer has. So, all right, with that answer.
It's a lot. Okay. So let's say they go towards the, buy a flight school route. So I'm going to bring in flightschoolsforsale.com, right? So that's, walk us through kind of what that business is all about, and what, if let's say I'm an interested buyer, I want to start a flight school and I want to buy. What's the steps to get started? How do they reach you? It's time to do some self promotion.
There you go. Well, I think we probably have more possible sellers than buyers in the group. So I'm going to talk about both sides. So, flight school owners, you know, grow your school. Your school is an investment. It's like growing any other business. Your school could be sold. As far as I see, almost every school is for sale. All right. I, as a flight school broker, have published listings, and I also have what I call pocket listings. This will be, for example, Tim owns a flight school that says, Ari, I'm not for sale, but for so much money, I'll pull the plug and retire. You never know. Maybe I'll find one. Recently, we had a campaign here in my office where we emailed, I think, pretty much every flight school in the country. I'm not sure how far they've gotten. We offer a free appraisal. So allow me, under strict non-disclosure agreement, to remotely come in and give you a free evaluation of what your school would be worth in today's market. Use me for it. It's free, complimentary. You'll get to meet me in my crew. And we do that remotely, right? I'll sign an NDA. At least you know how much it's worth. And we could do this every year, right? If you decide on selling, contact me. The way we publish and we advertise flight schools is we don't mention the name. It's done in great secrecy, right? We don't mention a name or location. So we might just say R141 Seabus Flight School for sale, Southeast United States, right? That's the most advertisement they will do. Right now, we have a backlog of buyers. So there's more buyers than sellers. That's a good thing for any flight school owner that's looking to sell. These are vetted buyers um, with cash in hand, with capital in hand, right? As far as a buyer will contact me, right? We go through at least a couple of hundred leads. We get leads from all over the world. And we probably end up with maybe a couple vetted buyers. So first, we're looking for their bio profile, interview with me. Right? What do I look for an interview? Right. So my team screens them. Once he gets by, comes to me. I'm looking for to see who's buying. Is it a company with experience? Is it someone that could run this type of business? And we're also looking for proof of funds. We're looking for financial capability. So a proof of funds, letter from a bank, anything that that could prove me the buyer has a means of paying for it. Then, as such, I reach the seller, the flight school owner, inform him that this particular company, entity, or person has passed our vetting. Do I have the clearance to show him, to show the company the presentation of your school? A presentation goes in three steps. First is a teaser. It's not showing anything, just very brief information about flight school. Second step is a presentation, right, with in-depth how many planes, how much money it's making, and whatnot. And the third is full financials, tax returns, leases, all the expenses, ins and outs, for a future owner to decide should he go forward or not. Shortly after, LOI, deposit becomes non-refundable, due diligence, at least 2 months, and closing. The fastest process I've seen in a month for a smaller school, probably looking 3 months for a bigger school, and possibly up to a year or 6 months, I would say, for a large school that has, you know, 30, 50 planes, FBO, SEVAs, VA, EASA, CAC approval, and so on.
Cool. Well, let's get into kind of so you're talking about selling and buying is cool. Let's talk about valuation. So that you kind of mentioned that earlier. You're giving a free evaluation or a free valuation for a business. I kind of have some idea of stuff here, but I'm no expert. I'm not a broker or business broker or anything like that. But let's just give an example for our audience. You have $1 million annual revenue, flight school. You're at, let's say, 5% profit margin. Let's say 10% profit margin. Make it simple numbers. Um, how much can I sell my school for? That's kind of a big question in the room. I know from just based off a marketing agency and selling a marketing agency and all that stuff. What we do in our market is you take the EBITDA, whatever you call it, the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, which is basically your profit, and then you have a multiplier, and this usually runs around the same amount as your annual revenue. That's typically what I see. So let's say you have $1 million business, you're at, let's say, 10-20% profit margin. You should be able to sell it for about $1 million. Depending on the systems you have, the people that are there. Maybe I'm kind of misspoken here. So maybe what's your perspective on how we evaluate from a big picture here? How do we evaluate what a flight school is worth when we sell?
Correct. Um, Flight schools, being a total different business, we cannot take those parameters that we use in other industries, right? The EBITDA multiplication will be the, safest and easiest way to go. And we'll take your example. Let's say your school does $1 million, EBITDA about 100,000. I'll multiply it. Times 10 might be tough, right? Investor want to see it lower, 4 or 5, probably not, 6, 8, right about there, right? More marketable. So at let's say 8 EBITDA comes up to 100,000. But then the flight school has 15 planes. They're worth 1.5 million. So what I see, right? We're going back to low profits, and an average flight school runs at about 30-40% capacity, right? So an average flight school that has maybe 10 planes, you end up seeing 3,000 hours flown a year. So that's how we get capacity, right? I take the planes, I multiply by 1,000, 10 planes. Let's say this particular example, right? Maybe it has 10 planes, or they're worth 1.5 million. It flies, school flies 3,000 hours, right about there, right? Makes about $1 million. Profits about 100,000. I multiply it times 8, I get 800,000. But his assets are worth 1.5 million. So assets usually exceed the EBITDA multiplication. So how do I go about it? Well, there's a few formulas. First of all, location, right? Most desirable location right now, it's Florida. We don't know it. California follows up. Texas, Arizona has been great. Chicago area, coming up. There's some requests for Chicago area just because maybe a smaller, franchise wants to be present there. Northeast, New York, Boston, by the weather a little bit, but there's huge market there with the locals, of course. But your flight school will be worth more in one part of the country, so location is definitely a factor, right? Yeah, add it here. Then your certificates, right? I keep going back to 141 and CVIS. Well, what's the certificate worth these days, right? I sold many. I sold a few this year, right? The going market was 500,000. Now we're pricing it somewhere between half to 750. So your certificate alone, paper only, that we have means of moving around the country, it's worth up to $750,000. So I call that an asset, tangible. It's transferable, right? If I buy your company, I inherit your CVIS, right? And you're 141. So I take the flight school, it's worth more in assets than EBITDA multiplication. Okay. Not always, of course. Here, I was asked to evaluate a 142 school, right, type rating school that really had no assets. They were renting flight simulators,
Simulators,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, Class D flight simulators. So all they had some classrooms, but they're profited. In that case, sure, I'll use the times 6. Came out good enough. But flight school planes that own planes, um, it will be a combination between assets, goodwill, and certificates, right? Now, most of the medium and large size schools have flight schools are dynamic businesses, right? And you probably heard it, Tim. Every bigger flight school, right? Let's say medium or large, they always have projects coming up. All right, next year I'm getting CVIS. Next year I'm forging a contract, an agreement with a college that will bring me, college students, and I could feed off of their F1 certificate, right? Another client of mine, pretty happy, called me this morning, says, I've got an agreement with International Airlines for their pipeline. We're expecting 200 students a year, up to 200. Doesn't have the fleet yet, but we'll worry about that later. Grab the contract first. Well, if you're selling in the midst of having all this, upcoming businesses, how do I evaluate that? It's not there yet. You work for it, you want to get paid for it, but you don't have it. Well, I put the earnout model, right? So let's say this particular case where a flight school has, 200 students come from abroad that brings so much money. Well, we'll put a value to it, right? Besides buying a school, here's a value, right? And you get paid in the next 3 years as long as you meet 80% of what you promised. You might stay on board, right? But, you also get a value of the upcoming agreements, contracts, achievements. It doesn't have to be just that's an airline contract. Could be a CVIS, could be a Title IV SC approval. It's great. Could be military contract. Could be anything. So I use all these formulas. It depends. Every flight school is different. I come up with a number, try to justify it. The owner of the flight school has it, and the moment decides to pull the plug or put himself in the market, we'll talk about how to advertise, go forward, and sell his school. Selling a school does not mean that the owner have to retire. Most of the time, the buyers are retaining the owner, right? We have, again, less classified buyers.
That too.
We have a bigger flight school buying a smaller flight school. We have the international investors coming in and buying, could be an airline. And recently, just maybe a couple of years now, we have influx of private equity firms. So they figured out that, these type of businesses are good investments. So I welcome them. I work with a few of them, right? They have the money, not the staff. So you as a flight school owner or operator might even be happier in that type of environment and bottom line, make more money.
Right. So I think you mentioned, we're kind of coming up on time here, so we're going to kind of conclude here. You mentioned there's a free evaluation or free evaluation that you kind of do for flight schools, completely, non-disclosed, secret, privacy and all that stuff. How do people reach out to you? It's gonna get to how do we move forward with you?
Good question.
Just phone number or a website or anything?
You can go to my website, flightschoolsforsale.com. And as you go, there's a pop-up coming up saying, sell my flight school and learn more. And it brings you to a email form that goes straight to me. And we'll start with, email and phone call, Zoom, and we go forward. That's the easiest way. Or email me, Ari@flightschoolsforsale.com. Info@flightschoolsforsale.com. It's website is easy to remember. Flightschools, the number 4, sale.com. Yeah, I said it 3 times.
Exactly right there. Flight schools for sale. All right. And do you want to share with your number? Or just leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, that just email, just website for now is fine.
Just email. Just email him. Don't call his phone. He's too busy. All right. We're going to conclude here. So if you are interested in selling your flight school, if you're interested in getting some consulting for your flight school, get that 30% higher profit margin, highly encourage you to check out Ari, check out his website, check out his, give him an email there. If you are interested in being a guest at the Right Rudder Marketing Podcast, you can go ahead and come to the Right Rudder Marketing website, check us out, send an email to us, info@rightruddermarketing.com. Info@rightruddermarketing.com. You can also call me. It's 1-314-804-1200. While we're at it, last kind of minute here, I want to kind of put some self-promotion out here. We did, I work with flight schools all across the country and now over the globe. And, we have a certain formula of how we can promote flight schools. We have a proven formula that works. And I wrote a book about it. It's called The Flight School Handbook of Marketing Knowledge. So it's on Amazon. It's, you just purchase it there. Also, if you are a flight school, and you want a free copy of the book, just, give me a message and I'll send a free copy to you. And we'll start talking about flight school markets and profit margins and getting the wheels in the air. So really appreciate you tuning in today at the Right Rudder Marketing Podcast. I'll see you guys hopefully in a couple of weeks or maybe next month. We'll be out also at the Daytona. We'll be in Daytona for NAFI. That's coming up in October, I think it is. We'll also be with King Schools in November, then Fasana next year. So I'm going to see you guys around, and I really appreciate you guys hopping on today.